helped. So I let my students, lead some of the sessions. I, really focus on having them participate even more so than I had before. There's this feature on Zoom called breakout rooms. I let, students interact not only, in front of everyone in the classroom, but also amongst themselves in the breakout rooms. So it's definitely different, but it's definitely possible. And, that was one of my most successful classes that I've ever taught at GA. It was the group of students the cohort that was online. So definitely challenging, but definitely possible.
Right. And you're thinking, I'm sorry, Abby.
All right.
I'm also thinking we don't know how long this COVID is going to last. And so I think you do have to prepare your students, right? This is probably going to be the environment they're going to go into for the first, work experience. So definitely being able to navigate through Zoom, be able to troubleshoot, right, when it's not working. Those are good learning skills to have.
That's such a great point. And, the other thing that I would say is I think some boot camps, from my experience, from what I know, they had an online option, but it was still you're doing it on your own, watching videos option. And I think that COVID kind of opened up this other option, which is online, but a classroom online option. Yeah. And, I think that's so cool because you're now not only limited to the folks that would sign up, within that area, but now you could potentially have somebody that's from the opposite side of the country or maybe the opposite side of the world in that same virtual class. And that, to your point, Jazmin, that helps train you for working with people from all over the world in the real world. So I definitely think that's one of the positives to come out of this.
Yeah. Also, as an instructor, I can see how just being in front of students for 2 hours teaching a subject, it makes you think in a different way, which is also, I can see being way better for the students long term because your instructor is having to improvise and has to think outside the box to make this an interactive or just a great class for you. So you are learning from someone who is also the person setting the stepping stones for you to hey, when things happen, you just shift, you just think outside of the box, and that's what UX is, So I can see the benefits of it from that too, and I think that's really cool.
I love that you said that, and I know we're not going to be talking about portfolios too much today, but just really quickly, the one thing that I notice as a hiring manager when I'm looking at portfolios is this notion of this project came together so perfectly and there not being clear evidence of what went wrong, what you struggled with. And when it comes to a portfolio and a case study, all students obviously want to make themselves look good because they want to make themselves marketable. That makes total sense. You want to, sell yourself. You want to impress the people looking at your work. But I think one of the biggest mistakes that a new UXer can make is, not acknowledging that things don't always go according to plan as a UX designer. Sometimes you have to pivot. Sometimes you have to really struggle. Sometimes you have to do things over, maybe not even once, maybe a couple of times or a few times. In fact, as a professional UXer, I don't think I've ever had a project where everything went from A to Z perfectly. And your point is really important because if it came down to two people and they were both sort of equally talented, maybe one of them a little bit more so, but the other one had experience, pivoting and navigating, certain issues that may come about and knowing that it's not always going to be perfect. I may go with that one because they understand. And I'm going to worry about them less as a team member because I know that they have those stripes. So that's such a great point.
Nice. Yeah. And I feel like that's very important. I think you have to get out of that comfort zone and work outside. What if things don't go the way you had planned them, right? And always be prepared to be able to quickly, like you mentioned, and be shift, right? And pivot. And okay, so then this takes me to my next question, Miguel. And it's more I guess we want to see, your take on this as far as can you share any trends that you have seen with post-grad employment and satisfaction rates for those that do attend the bootcamp? bootcamp?
For sure. I think this is a very reasonable question. However, I don't have any specific data points or exact numbers, to be honest, but
that's okay.
I haven't done that analysis for my former students, but I will say that as a current UX educator, one of the things that I have seen is this expectation from students that they will definitely find a job after 3 months or even 6 months, or that they're supposed to find a job after 3 months or 6 months. And I'm not referring to the programs that have that job guarantee. I'm referring to the others. So let me take this opportunity to be very honest.
Yeah.
As someone who spends so much time helping new UXers come up in the field, and folks know, me for this, and as someone who has had their own struggles coming up as well, I totally get it. I truly do. It's very, very hard. It's hard in general. And then you add a pandemic on top of that. Oof, if you're listening and you're struggling and you're on the come up and you're like, when is my time, gonna come? I hear you, I feel you, I totally get it. And this is whether you're self-taught or going through a boot camp, but specifically for those that finished up their boot camp or are about to finish up their boot camp, I would look at the certificate as an indicator that you finished your program, but not necessarily as an indicator that you finished your learning. So from my experience with my former students, I've seen many of them find jobs and many of them be very satisfied with their bootcamp experience. And of course, I do think it comes down to what kind of instructor you have. But very rarely have I seen folks get a job the next day, or, it being very common that it happens in 3 months or 6 months. And I've especially seen my former students find work when they don't stop working on their craft. So I think it's a mistake to just jump right into the job hunt right after the boot camp is over. And even when you start the UX job hunt, it's important to not stop working on your craft. For those struggling economically, I totally feel you. It's a hard time. But for those that may not specifically be struggling economically and are just super hungry and ready for their first UX gig, 3 months is not a long time. Or even 6. That's not a long time. But there is work out there. And I say that because I see a lot of posts on LinkedIn saying, I've been looking for 3 months and I haven't found any work, tier. I totally get it. I'm very sensitive to that, but it's not a long time. You have to continue to work. I think that just means you're not ready. And that means that you have to keep working on your craft. So that is how I would look at the post bootcamp experience. And that has been my experience with my former students. And, this is what I preach to my former students. And most of them, a lot of them, they continue chatting with me after the bootcamp is over, and I'm more than happy to do so. And I've seen them have a lot of success, but that's because they were willing to continue to put in that work after the boot camp.
I actually wanted to go further into that because so when you say that like the 3 to 6 months is not a very long time, I definitely do agree with that. And so I guess like my follow-up question to that would be like, so for me, for example, I'm going to speak from my own experience. So for me, like I am a person who did not get a job straight out of the boot camp, and I'm a big believer in, you have to further your craft and continue your craft, right? Because that's the only way you're going to gain experience. You're going to like find what you're good at, what you're not good at. And you just like, it's just like life. You have to keep learning. You have to keep moving. And I've met a couple of people who are kind of like in my situation also, where it's like, okay, it's been 3 months. You keep going. It's been 6 months. Okay. And you're like, oh, something has to change. I'm going to meetups, and this is pre-COVID, of course. I'm going to meetups, I'm meeting people, I'm having coffee meetings, I'm working on my portfolio and adding more content on there. But I'm also having a lot of portfolio reviews, and you're still not getting in the door, or like not even getting in enough where it's like you can even get an interview. And so then, I'll go back to the board. I'm like, okay, cool. What is there? What do I do next? So let's work on my resume. Is it the wording? I need to have more numbers to show like, quantity wise, like what my impact is having on the projects that I'm working on. And also, freelancing on the side. So trying to get the more experience that everyone tells you that you need to get. And so fast forward to like a year and still nothing post-graduation. What would you say for a student like that? Because I know for me, I've had multiple conversations where with my career advisor where I'm like, hey, you're telling me to do A, B, C, and D. I've done A, B, C, and D, E, F, G, and H. I've done it all. So what are the next steps for me if I can ask you that?
Absolutely. I will say, Abby, that I don't think most folks are doing A, B, C, D, and all the other letters. I definitely commend you for confidently owning that, because I don't think that that's the case for most folks. What I see is most folks only focus on the job hunt, understandably so, because the job hunt on its own is a full-time job. So I totally get it, when they just focus on that. But I think it's a mistake to only focus on the job hunt. I think most folks are not, many folks are doing a lot of those things, or some of those things, or this one and that one and the other one and the other one. But I think, it's very overwhelming to think about having to do all of those things. So I definitely want to start with that empathy first and foremost. I think from my experience, what I've seen, it comes down to two things, and you kind of alluded to the first one. To one of them. But the first that I would say is storytelling. You have to get your UX story straight. You have to know what you want to do in UX. So too many people just want to become a UX designer, but not enough people think about making their dent in society through UX design. And what I mean by that is the goal shouldn't, and in some cases can't only be, I want to become a UX designer. Mm-hmm. It should be, what are you passionate about? What really means a lot to you? Maybe do you have a hobby? Mm-hmm. Maybe is there an issue that you're passionate about? This year there's a lot of that we can focus on. Is there, a certain industry that you're passionate about? And thinking about those things and crafting what your story is. So it's not just, what you sometimes see from the portfolios, which is, I'm a UX designer. I care about human-centered design. Mm-hmm. I'm the ally of the user. That's everyone who's a UX. Anyone who has UX, those two letters as in their title, that's all of y'all, right? So you have to think about, what is your focus, which is what I call your UX focus. Is it research? Is it design? Maybe it is a generalist. Okay, cool. If it's a generalist, what is your UX superpower? Is it design systems? Is it prototyping? And then from there is what is your UX interest? What is your industry interest? Maybe it's you're interested in flowers. Okay, Miguel, but how am I going to redesign the UX of flowers? That's not what I mean. What I mean is maybe you could think about marrying your passion for flowers and UX. And so then you can aspire to maybe become a UX designer at 1-800-flowers.com, because they have a website and I'm pretty sure they have a UX team. So, I think the number one thing that folks lack when they have done all of these things or many of these things and they're still not getting results is they don't have a focus. And what happens is what I think Elise UX coined as the spray and pray technique, which is you're just applying everywhere. So if you send out 100 applications to all of these places and 5 get back to you, right? That's a 5% success rate. But if you make your journey very intentional around your UX focus, your UX superpower, your UX interest, your industry interest, et cetera, and you put yourself in a position where you can speak to companies more directly because you have that focus and you have expertise in that focus, and you only apply to 10 and 2 get back to you, that's a 20% success rate. So it is definitely about working smarter, not always working harder, yes, but working harder as well. And for me, that comes down to your story, getting that story straight. For example, if you want to work at Spotify, you should probably have some music related work on your portfolio, right?
Yeah.
So that you can make that connection with the other side. And so, that leads me to my last point, which is we can't all aspire to work at Facebook as a product designer. We shouldn't all aspire to work at, Twitter as a, UX designer. And I'm probably messing up any potential connections that I'm saying that, but, I believe in being very real. And, too many people are only applying to the same 3 jobs. And so, of course, there's saturation there. But take me, for example. I work at NYC & Company, New York City's tourism department. I'm pretty sure